Thanks for tuning into No Wine in No Time. I'm your host Dave, and today we will discuss France's Beaujolais wine region. So where exactly is Beaujolais on the map? Now technically it's part of France's Burgundy region, but it's where we come out of Burgundy, the final appellation being the Mâconnais, and before we get to the city of Lyon. That is the Beaujolais region in France. And one thing that's celebrated throughout France and really a phenomenon throughout the world is a thing called Nouveau Beaujolais Day. Nouveau Beaujolais is about 40 years old, and it's always celebrated on the third Thursday of November. And that's consistent year in and year out. And that's to celebrate the harvest and the release of the first wine of that particular year. So basically, we're picking grapes in late September, early October, and by the middle or latter part of November, depending on where that third Thursday falls in, we're releasing the first wine. So, I've been blessed enough to be in France for 3 out of the last 7 Nouveau Beaujolais days. And while the wine itself is a bit marginal, the celebration is absolutely fantastic. This is a festival and a tribute to the harvest for that particular year. And the French really get into this and really enjoy it. Now, if Beaujolais was judged specifically on Nouveau Beaujolais, then I think it would be at a severe disadvantage. So this is kind of a novelty wine, and certainly one that's fun to drink and celebrate the harvest. But Beaujolais goes a lot further than just Nouveau Beaujolais. So let's put it in a couple of different classifications. So first off, the grape Gamay produces a very light red wine. It has very thin skins. It's similar to Pinot Noir, but maybe just a skosh lighter than Pinot Noir. So it really is the king grape of the Beaujolais area. So we talked about Nouveau Beaujolais being one classification of wine from that area, basically going from field to bottle in just about a month. So if we look beyond that, with a wine that has a significantly higher quality, we look to just the generic term Beaujolais. Now, this is any wine that could come from any of the numerous 300 villages throughout Beaujolais itself. That's another classification, and a wine that's slightly more mature than Nouveau Beaujolais. If we look at the next step of quality, we have a wine that is termed Beaujolais Villages. Now, Beaujolais Villages are a series of villages that are considered to be a higher quality area to produce this Gamay grape. So if we look at Beaujolais from a map standpoint, the Beaujolais Villages are in kind of the western portion, eastern portion, and southern portion of Beaujolais itself. Then we get into the top of the mountain, and that's a classification of wine called Cru de Beaujolais. In other words, the best of Beaujolais. When we talk about 300 villages throughout Beaujolais, well, the Cru villages are limited to just 10 individual villages. So you talk about a very interesting terroir and a very limited group of villages. And those villages are Saint-Amour, Julianas, Chinas, Moulin-Avant, Fleury, Chirobos, Morgon, Ragny, Bruy, and Côte de Bruy. Now, what makes these particular Cru villages so special? Well, in these particular areas, there's a combination of soil types that breaks down to granite, schist, and limestone. So when we look at those three things, the wines themselves have incredible minerality, because as rain comes down through the granite, the schist, and the limestone, it's imparting those minerality characteristics into the wine itself, or into the grapes, and obviously that translates into the wine itself. So these particular Beaujolais wines have tremendous finesse. They are quite complex, and what's different than their Nouveau, generic Beaujolais, or Beaujolais Villages, these are wines that can age for an extended period of time. So I picked one for you today. This comes from Claudie Pijouet, and this is from the town of Chinas. And this is a 2015 Chinas, which is 100% Gamay, coming from the town of Chinas. So let's take a look and see what we think. So this particular wine, while it does have some sort of transparency to it, it's also slightly opaque. In other words, I can see through the edges, but I can't see through the middle of the wine itself, which tells us it's a lightly phenolic or anthocyanin wine, but it's not super light. This particular wine spent 6 months in oak, so that helps to develop its characteristics a little bit. If we swirl to liberate the aromas and give a little sniff, we notice that this particular wine smells of very rich plums. I can smell a little bit of minerality, like coming out and kind of smelling fresh cement right after a rain. I get a little bit of clovey nature, even a little bit of cinnamon that's coming off of this. So let's go ahead and give it a taste. Wow, that's really exceptional. So around the middle, we have kind of a core of black cherry with a little bit of plum around the edges. Beautiful minerality. As it enters the palate, it has a significant sweetness that kind of seduces you into thinking, wow, this is a soft wine. Then it hits mid-palate and gets a lift from incredible acidity. And then on the backside, very velvet light tannins. And all the way it rolls along the palate, you're getting a very spicy persona, a little bit of clove and cinnamon type flavors. Really, this is a beautiful wine. So, when we look at Beaujolais wines and we think about what category of cuisine this pairs beautifully with, I always think fowl. And what I mean by that is turkey, chicken, grouse, pheasant, those type of either game birds or domesticated birds. A Beaujolais does beautifully with that. Something like a Cru de Beaujolais, like the Chinas, you could even pull it up a little bit higher and pair it with a more stout meat like a pork. Really, it's quite pleasant, and it will stand up to the stronger meat itself. So, I'm going to enjoy a little bit of more Chinas. Thanks so much for tuning in, and please tune in next time, and soon you'll know wine in no time.